I want to tell you about a phone call I got once from a customer, not a complaint about service. The service was fine. The complaint was about something one of my finance managers had told him. An interest rate, quoted with handshake level certainty.
And it wasn't accurate.
The rate had changed. The finance manager hadn't checked. And by the time the customer called me, he had already told his wife, done the math on the monthly payments, made plans around a number that wasn't real.
And he called you, not the finance manager.
Me, because my name was on the building. And that call cost me more than fixing the number. It cost me 3 months of a relationship repair with a customer who had sent me 4 referrals in a year. I didn't make the error, but it was mine to fix.
So what did you do, Hal?
Made it right. What it took. Because my name was on the building. That's not a complicated decision. That's just what you have to do when you own a business.
Most operators haven't had that conversation yet about AI. I mean, not about the finance manager, but about the workflow. Not the handshake, but the system. So when your AI is running a sequence at 2 in the morning while you're asleep and something goes sideways, the phone call still comes to you because everything your system produces has your name on it.
That's not a new concept. That's just what it means to be an owner.
Exactly. And today we talk about the step of the impact loop that protects that. And we've spent 3 weeks building capability. Identify, mode, parameters, activate. Each step adding intelligence, adding efficiency, adding the kind of compounding capacity that changes how a business operates.
Today we talk about what makes all this sustainable.
I'm Ken,
I'm Hal.
and this is Small Business Big AI, the podcast for operators who want to build something that lasts, not just something that runs fast.
Week 4 of the Impact series. And today we cover the layer nobody gets excited about. The one that sounds like overhead. The one that feels like it can wait.
Until it can't.
Check.
Check. The C in the impact loop. What it is, why it matters, and through one operator story, what it cost when it's missing.
Let me start with something that I think is running quietly in the background of a lot of operators right now. We've been building towards AI autonomy over this past series. More execution, less you in the room for every step. Last week, we talked about James's workflow, handling over 40 lead inquiries while he was on the job site, adding names to his notebook. And on one level, that's exactly what we've been working toward.
It is.
But there's a version of AI operating where you're not watching that starts to feel a little uncomfortable. Is that discomfort warranted? Or is it just not being familiar with something that's new?
Well, it's both, Hal. And that distinction, it really matters. So the discomfort that comes from something being unfamiliar, well, that's noise. That fades as you build experience with how workflows actually perform, where they're consistent and where they're not. But the discomfort that comes from a real question, who's responsible if something goes wrong? Well, that one deserves more than reassurance. It deserves a system.
And most businesses don't have that system yet.
Most businesses have activated workflows. Things are running, outputs are coming, and there's a quiet assumption operating in the background.
The AI is probably fine.
which is often true. And that's actually the problem.
Because often true breeds a habit of not checking.
Exactly. And the moment that you stop checking, well, then you've removed the one layer designed to catch the exception. So exceptions are always inevitable in any system, whether it's human or AI. So the question isn't whether something will go wrong. The question is whether your business has a layer that catches it before it becomes something that you cannot recover from.
And that layer has a name.
Right. And that name is check. Now, let me be clear about what check is because it really gets misunderstood. So, check is not reviewing every AI output before anything happens. If you're doing that, well, then you haven't built a workflow. You built a slightly faster draft machine with you still in the middle of everything.
And that's not where we're going.
No, that is not where we're going. Check is something more precise. Now, check is human judgment applied at the right moments, not all moments. And it's applied to evaluate and calibrate intelligence before or after it acts. So the key word is calibrate, not control, not micromanage, but calibrate. So you're not trying to be present for everything. You're designing the moments where your judgment is genuinely essential and building those moments into the system.
So it's not constant presence, it's strategic presence.
Strategic presence. So think about how a good manager actually operates. They don't stand over every employee's shoulder all day, but they've defined, here's when I need to review this before it goes out, or here's when I need to be looped in. Here's when I trust the process, and here's when I don't. So, check is that same managerial intelligence applied to AI workflows, defined in advance, built into the architecture, not improvised after something goes wrong.
And without it,
Well, how without it, you have a powerful system with no one accountable for its outputs, which works beautifully until it doesn't. And when it doesn't, you can find out the way Renata did.
from a client call,
So, Renata runs a market research and strategy consulting firm. I mean, she has 4 people. She works with mid sized businesses on competitive landscape analysis and market entry decisions and really industry trend reports. So, it is the kind of work where accuracy isn't a feature, it is the entire value proposition.
her clients are paying for facts, not impressions.
That's right, facts, credible analysis, and the reputation to back both. So she's been doing this for 12 years. And in those 12 years, Renata has had exactly one non negotiable practice. And that is before any report leaves her desk, I mean, any report, she reads it aloud to herself.
Allowed?
Yes, aloud, with coffee in hand, alone in her office. She learned this from a mentor really early in her career, someone whose single misquoted statistic had cost them a client and 3 months of reputation repair. So Renata never forgot this. The mentor told her the ear catches what the eye misses. And so she built that into her practice from day one. Reading aloud became her final gate. Every report, every time, 12 years without exception.
Now that's discipline.
That, Hal, is a system built from a lesson that she never wanted to learn herself. And it worked for 12 years. Nothing significant slid through. Nothing that mattered went out that she hadn't heard with her own ears. And then she built an AI workflow, and it was genuinely excellent. She'd done the architecture right, clear intent for every research phase, mode defined as a rigorous analyst with a specific posture around sourcing, and parameters that included citation standards and output format. So she'd done everything that we've talked about in this series.
She listened to episodes 84 and 85.
Yeah, figuratively speaking. And the workflow transformed her capacity in a way that felt like a gift. I mean, reports that used to take 20 hours were only taking 11. So the AI was handling the synthesis, the competitive landscape sections, the trend analysis. And Renata was doing the work that only she could do, like the strategic interpretation or the client specific framing, the recommendations that came from her 12 years of knowing what mid sized business leaders actually need to hear. You know, her system, it was running beautifully.
And she stopped reading the reports aloud.
Right. She stopped reading the reports aloud. Now, not all at once, but gradually. So the way any habit erodes when the urgency behind it starts to feel less real. So the workflow was reliable. The outputs were accurate. She started reading on screen, quickly for flow and structure instead of aloud for every word. And then when a Tuesday morning in February came, her phone rang.
The client.
A regional healthcare network that she'd worked with for 3 years, a professional relationship, a very good one. And the client says gently, "Hey, Renata, we love the report, but we can't find the study that you cited in section 3.
What study?
A study on outpatient visit volume trends, a specific journal, a specific year, a compelling statistic that supported the analysis cleanly. So the AI had generated it with total confidence, the kind of citation that looks completely authoritative, real sounding journal, real sounding author, specific enough to feel verified, but the study didn't exist.
A hallucination?
A hallucination. And because the rest of the report was excellent, the structure was right, the analysis was sound, the framing was exactly what the client needed. So Renata had reviewed it on the screen, approved the flow, and sent it without hearing it, without the practice that had protected her for 12 years.
Because she trusted the output.
Yes, she trusted the output. The workflow had been so reliable for so long that her own guard had come down. And when the guard comes down, that's precisely when the exception finds the gap. Now, the client was gracious about it. Renata found a legitimate source that supported the same point, and she sent a corrected version, addressed it directly. The relationship in this instance survived, but something else happened in that moment, something more important than that correction.
Why?
Well, she realized that she had built a powerful system and had stopped asking whether the system needed her to show up for it. She had activated the workflow. She'd lost the check. And then she asked herself the question that changed everything.
What question?
What if the client hadn't called?
What if the client hadn't called?
What if that fabricated statistic had gone into a board presentation, maybe into a regulatory submission, into a decision with real downstream consequences that nobody traced back to a citation until much later?
The call was a gift.
Right. The call was a gift. And not every operator gets that gift. Some find out differently. Some find out at a cost that's much harder to recover from than a corrected report in a difficult conversation. So, check is the system that means that you don't need the gift because a checkpoint catches it first.
So, how does she build it? Because I think the risk here is that operators hear the story and overcorrect. They think, I need to review everything again. And if they do that, they've undone everything the workflow was built to give them.
And that's exactly the wrong conclusion, Hal. And Renata was careful not to draw it. She didn't ask, how do I review everything? She asked, where in this workflow is my judgment genuinely non negotiable? And when she mapped it out, it came down to 3 layers.
Walk me through them.
Well, okay. So, layer 1, that's where you review checkpoints, specific moments in the workflow where an output pauses before acting, and then a human evaluates it. Now, not everything. So, you're going to evaluate the high stakes outputs. So, for Renata, the checkpoint is simple: any factual claim with a citation. Before that goes into a final report, it hits her queue. So she verifies the source exists. 8 minutes per report on average.
The checkpoint is narrow. It's not read the whole report again from the top.
One specific thing, which she can do quickly and consistently because she knows exactly what she's looking for. So the more precisely you define the checkpoint, the less time it takes and the more reliable it becomes. And she brought something else back, Hal.
The reading aloud.
Right. The reading aloud. Not for every word of every report, but for every section where AI generated the core analysis. Because, like I said, the ear still catches what the eye misses. So she just built it into the architecture instead of relying on personal discipline alone.
She didn't abandon the practice. She systematized it.
Right. Now we have layer 2, and they are the approval gates. These are the moments in a workflow that require explicit authorization before the system proceeds. I mean, it's different from a review checkpoint. A checkpoint is about accuracy. An approval gate is about scope. Like, is this situation one that the workflow was actually designed for?
Like James's edge case routing, estate properties, commercial jobs, anything outside the standard profile pauses it before it moves.
Exactly what we talked about last week with James. But now Renata has an approval gate for any report going to a client that she's worked with for less than 6 months. You know, new relationships, they get more oversight until trust is established in both directions.
And the gate adjusts as relationship matures.
Right. That's just smart governance, and it's static. You don't govern a workflow the same way in a month as you do in 12 months. If the track record is there, then trust scales, but only with evidence. Then you have layer 3, and that's audit trails. This is the one most businesses skip entirely, and then they desperately wish that they built in this layer.
What does an audit trail actually mean in practice?
So how it means that you can answer one question, like, what did my workflow do, when, and why? It's called a log or record. It's not for paranoia, but for pattern recognition. Because the most valuable thing an audit trail gives you isn't the ability to catch a problem after it happens.
It's seeing the pattern before it becomes a problem.
So Renata runs a 15-minute review of her workflow's activity log every week. Not reading every output, like I said, but scanning the categories. How many citations flagged? How many reports hit the approval gate? Anything unusual in the pattern? So 6 weeks in, she found something. Her workflow was generating more citation hallucinations in one specific type of analysis, like market sizing for niche industries. It was doing this consistently, not randomly, but every time she was in that territory, the workflow reached further than it should have.
A pattern she never would have seen without the trail.
Right, never. So she adjusted the mode and the parameters for that specific analysis type. And then really the hallucinations dropped. Not because the AI got smarter, but because she got more precise about what she was asking it to do. So the audit trail turned an exception into an insight. Now that's check functioning the right way. That's check functioning the way it's supposed to, not catching failures after they happen, generating the intelligence that prevents them altogether.
Let's talk about the broader failure patterns because Renata's story is about hallucinations. But that's not the only way things go sideways.
And it's not. And I want operators to understand something. Almost every significant AI failure in a business context shares the same root cause, not a tool problem, not a capability problem,
A governance problem.
a governance problem. Missing check. 3 patterns, all real, all preventable. So, first, hallucinated facts. We're not a story. AI generates information that sounds authoritative and is completely fabricated. Citations, statistics, specific claims with real sounding sources. Now, this happens most often when AI is operating in domains that require sourced evidence and there's no checkpoint requiring verification. So the fix isn't better AI. It's a review checkpoint on factual claims.
Second,
Unauthorized scope. A workflow is activated with a defined purpose. Over time, through small variations in edge cases, it starts handling situations it was never designed for. A sensitive client topic, maybe an unusual request, a communication that needed a human voice, not a system response. So the workflow handles it anyway because no one defined the boundary clearly enough and there's no approval gate to pause it.
the workflow didn't fail. It just did more than it was supposed to.
Right. It did more than it was supposed to without the judgment to know it was out of bounds. And by the time the operator sees it, the output has already reached the client.
Third,
Well, third is brand drift. Now, this one is slow and often invisible until suddenly it isn't. A workflow has been producing client communications for months. The mode and parameters were set up well. But 6 months ago, the business has evolved since then, and the voice has been refined. The messaging has shifted, but the workflow hasn't been updated. And slowly, the output starts to sound more like the company did 6 months ago. Not wrong, just behind, just slightly not quite you.
and the audit trail catches that pattern before the client does.
Right. The audit trail and a scheduled calibration. So smart businesses put a check review on the calendar, not just when something breaks, but deliberately. So every 90 days, does this workflow still reflect who we are today? Are the parameters current? Is the mode still accurate? You don't buy a car and never service it. You don't hire an employee and never give them feedback. You don't build a workflow and let it run indefinitely without looking at what it's actually doing.
You build it, you run it, you catch it, you watch it, you improve it.
And that's the loop. And check is what keeps the loop honest. Now, before we move on, there's a point underneath all of this that I think deserves to be said plainly.
Go ahead.
Well, when you build AI workflows, when you activate intelligence to operate on behalf of your business, then something shifts in what you're responsible for.
What shifts?
Before AI workflows, you were responsible for what you did, your decisions, your communications, your work product. The accountability was direct, visible, personal. And now you're responsible for what your systems do, what your workflows produce, what the intelligence that you deployed decided to include in a research report or say to a client or send at 2 in the morning while you were asleep.
That's more responsibility, not less.
Significantly more, Hal. And I think there's a narrative running through the business world right now that AI reduces responsibility, that you can delegate to a system and the accountability travels with the delegation, that if something goes wrong, it was the AI's decision.
That is not how it works.
No, that is not how it works. And I know that you know that because you are in a business where every person's actions under that roof were your accountability every day.
Every single day, I never got to say, that was my finance manager's error. When the customer called, they called me because my name was on the building. Everything under that roof was mine, the wins and the mistakes alike.
And that's the operating principle of every serious business owner. AI doesn't change that principle. It expands the surface area it applies to.
Because now the things acting under your name doesn't clock out.
It doesn't clock out. The AI, it does not get tired. It doesn't get sloppy. It doesn't forget and let the follow-up slip. But it does hallucinate. It does drift. It does operate outside the bounds that you set if the bounds weren't precise enough, or if the governance layer that was supposed to catch it never got built. And when it does, the name on it, the name on the building, the name on the business, well, it's yours. Check isn't optional. It's not an advanced feature that you add when you get more comfortable with AI. It's the layer that makes everything else responsible. It's the layer that keeps the power of AI from becoming a liability that you did not see coming.
That call was a gift.
You got that right. That call was a gift. Renata's story ends well. The relationship survived. The reputation survived. And she fixed the system, not just the incident. Now, that's what good operators do when something breaks. They don't just patch the output. They ask, what does the architecture need to be different? But the question I want you to carry out of this episode is this.
What if the client hadn't called?
Right. What if the client hadn't called? What if that fabricated statistic had gone further into a board presentation, into a regulatory submission, into a decision with real downstream consequences that nobody traced back to a single citation in a research report until it was too late? So, check is the system that means that you don't need the call because the checkpoint caught it first, because the audit trail surfaced the pattern, because you built the governance layer that makes autonomy something that you earned, not something you're quietly hoping for the best about.
Not just capability.
But confidence. The confidence to give AI more autonomy because the oversight is real, because the name on the work is protected. And that's what actually unlocks the next level. Not more tools, not more prompts, more trust. Earned through a system that protects the thing that you spent years building. Okay, one step this week, Hal. Now, just one. I want our listeners to pick one workflow that's currently running in your business. Now, ask it 3 questions.
First, what's the highest stakes output this workflow produces? The thing that, if it were wrong or off brand or inaccurate, would matter most.
And second, is there a human checkpoint before that output reaches whoever it's going to? So now, if the answer to question 2 is no, then that's your governance project. One checkpoint, not the whole architecture. The highest stakes output. One review step built in advance at the right moment, 8 minutes, Renata style.
Third, can you answer this question? What did my workflow do this week? Build the visibility before you need it, because the time to create an audit trail is not after something goes sideways. It's now, while everything is running beautifully, while you still have the luxury of building it without urgency and without a client call waiting on the other end. Let's bring it together. Over this series, we've been building towards something real. Identify, knowing the decision, mode, defining the perspective, parameters, encoding the standard, activate, delegating the execution.
Each layer adding capability, each layer creating the kind of compounding capacity that changes what a business can do.
And check is what makes all of it sustainable.
Not because AI can't be trusted, but because trust in any system with any intelligence has to be earned, maintained, and verified. Now, that's not distrust, that's leadership. So the operators who get this right aren't the most cautious ones. They're the most deliberate ones. They build workflows that run, and they build governance that ensures that those workflows keep running the way that they were designed to, consistently, accurately, in alignment with who the business actually is. Review checkpoints at the high stakes moments, approval gates for the situations the workflow wasn't designed for, audit trails that turn exceptions into insights before they become incidents.
And here's what that buys you, not just protection,
but confidence. The confidence to give AI more autonomy because the oversight is real, because the name on the work is protected, because you're not hoping the workflow is fine, you know it is. Now, I want to close with something simple because I think it's the most important thing that I've said or going to say today. Everything your system produces has your name on it. The newsletter, the proposal, the research report, the follow-up email that went out at 2 o'clock in the morning. All of it, yours. Now check is how you stand behind it.
Next week, the final episode of the Impact series.
And that's episode 88, Transform. Now, we have talked about how intelligence gets designed, how it gets structured, how it gets activated, how it gets governed. But next week, what happens when all of it comes together? What a business looks like when this loop has been running for 6 months or maybe for a year. What becomes possible that wasn't possible before?
Not just better outputs, not just more time.
But something different, something that compounds.
It's structural, it lasts, and that creates an advantage that's genuinely hard for any competitor, especially one who hasn't done the work to catch up.
Now, that's next week. So until then, build the checkpoint, protect the output, and remember, the system you're building has your name on everything it produces.
And keep building your technology-enabled superpower. And this has been Small Business, Big AI.
We'll catch you in the next episode.